Picture this. You're standing in the parking lot of a church. The same church where you got married 7 years ago. You're not there to celebrate. You're not there to cry. You're there because your best friend called you in a panic and said, "You need to see this. Right now." And what you see changes everything. The groom, your ex-husband, is standing at the altar in a $3,000 suit, sweating through his collar. The bride is nowhere to be found. The guests are murmuring. The pastor looks confused. And then your phone buzzes. It's a message from a number you don't recognize. Just 4 words, "He got what deserved." I didn't send that message. I didn't plan any of this. I didn't even want to be there that day. But God, the universe, karma, whatever you believe in, had other plans. My name is Rebecca Calloway. I'm 34 years old. And this is the story of how my husband of 7 years left me for a wealthy socialite, destroyed everything I built, and then watched his perfect new life collapse on the one day he thought he'd finally won. I grew up in Asheville, North Carolina, the kind of town where everyone knows your name, and your mama's name, and your grandmama's name too. I was never the prettiest girl in the room, never the most popular. But I worked hard. I put myself through nursing school at UNC Asheville while waitressing on weekends, and by the time I was 26, I had a steady job at Mission Hospital, a small apartment I was proud of, and a heart full of hope. That's when I met Daniel Whitmore. Daniel was tall, charming, and had a smile that could light up a room. He was a sales manager at a pharmaceutical company and drove a car that was way nicer than anything I'd ever been in. We met at a mutual friend's barbecue on the 4th of July. He brought me a cold lemonade without me asking, sat next to me on the porch steps, and we talked for 4 hours straight. I fell fast. Maybe too fast. We dated for 2 years, and he proposed on the rooftop of a restaurant in downtown Asheville with a ring that must have cost him 3 months' salary. I said yes before he even finished the sentence. My mama cried. His mama cried. Everyone said we were the perfect couple. We got married in June, in a small ceremony at a chapel in the Blue Ridge Mountains. It was everything I'd ever dreamed of. Wildflowers. Sunlight. Daniel crying when he saw me walk down the aisle. For the first 2 years of our marriage, things were good. Not perfect, no marriage is, but good. We bought a house in Weaverville, just north of Asheville. A white house with a wraparound porch and a yard big enough for the dogs we planned to get. I kept working at the hospital. Daniel got promoted. We talked about starting a family. But slowly, quietly, things began to shift. I noticed it first in small ways. Daniel started working late more often. He'd come home after 9 p.m. smelling like restaurant food and expensive cologne, not his cologne. He started going to work conferences on weekends, which had never happened before. He bought a new phone and set a passcode on it, something he'd never done in 7 years. I told myself I was imagining things. I was a nurse working 12-hour shifts. I was tired. I was stressed. I was probably being paranoid. But then one evening in February, a Tuesday, I remember, because I'd just finished a brutal double shift, I came home to find Daniel sitting at the kitchen table with his laptop open. He snapped it shut the moment I walked in. "Long day," he said. "Too casual. Too quick." "Yeah," I said. The usual. I went to take a shower. When I came back, he was on his phone in the backyard, speaking in a low voice. I watched him through the kitchen window. He was smiling. The kind of smile he used to give me in the early days. That night, I couldn't sleep. The next morning, while Daniel was in the shower, his phone buzzed on the nightstand. I know I shouldn't have looked. But I did. The message was from someone saved as C, just the letter C. It said, "Last night was everything. Miss you already." I put the phone down. I sat on the edge of the bed. And I didn't cry. I just felt the floor fall out from under me. I waited 3 days before I said anything. 3 days of carrying that knowledge around like a stone in my chest, going to work, taking care of patients, smiling at colleagues, coming home and cooking dinner and pretending everything was normal. On the third day, I sat Daniel down at the kitchen table and told him what I'd seen. He didn't deny it. He didn't even look sorry. He said, "Rebecca, I've been trying to figure out how to tell you this. I've met someone. And I think I love her." I asked him who she was. He hesitated. Then he said her name. Charlotte Beaumont. Charlotte Beaumont was not just someone. Charlotte Beaumont was the 38-year-old daughter of Richard Beaumont, founder of Beaumont Pharmaceuticals, the same company Daniel worked for. She had gone to Duke University, spent her 20s traveling Europe, and had recently returned to Asheville to take over a division of her father's company. She was beautiful in the way that money makes people beautiful: perfect hair, perfect skin, perfect clothes, the kind of effortless elegance that comes from never having to worry about a single bill in your life. Daniel had been assigned to her team 6 months ago. 6 months. He had been lying to me for 6 months. I asked him if he was serious. He said yes. I asked him if he wanted to work on our marriage. He paused, and that pause told me everything. Then he said, "I don't think so, Rebecca. I'm sorry." I asked him to leave that night. He packed 2 bags and walked out of our White House with the wraparound porch without looking back. The divorce was finalized 4 months later. Because we had no children and had kept our finances mostly separate, it was relatively straightforward. I kept the house barely, because I had to refinance to buy out his share. I kept the dogs, 2 golden retrievers named Biscuit and Gravy. I kept my dignity, though some days that felt like the hardest thing to hold on to. Daniel moved into Charlotte's penthouse apartment in downtown Asheville. 3 months later, they were photographed together at a charity gala in the Asheville Citizen-Times. Charlotte in a floor-length gown, Daniel in a tux, looking like he'd stepped into the life he always thought he deserved. My coworkers showed me the photo. I pretended not to care. But at home that night, alone with Biscuit and Gravy, I cried harder than I had in years. Here's the thing about heartbreak. It doesn't kill you. It feels like it will. It genuinely feels like the pain will swallow you whole. But it doesn't. You wake up the next morning. And the morning after that. And eventually, slowly, imperfectly, you start to rebuild. I threw myself into my work. I signed up for additional certifications and completed a specialized program in trauma nursing. I started running in the mornings, just short runs at first, barely a mile, but eventually 5 Burmese chots, and then a half marathon. I repainted the interior of the house, wall by wall, weekend by weekend, covering over the life Daniel and I had shared with fresh color. My friends showed up for me in ways I will never forget. My best friend, Tamara Jenkins, came over every Friday night for the first 3 months, with wine and bad reality TV. My coworker Denise Okafor listened to me cry in the break room on more than one occasion, and never once made me feel pathetic. My mama drove up from Asheville's South Side every Sunday to make me lunch and remind me that I was worthy of love. Slowly, I started to feel like myself again. About a year after the divorce, I went on my first date. It was awkward and short, and nothing came of it. But I'd done it. 6 months after that, I met someone named Marcus Webb, a high school history teacher from Black Mountain, kind and steady and funny in a quiet way. We took things slow. We went on long hikes and had long conversations, and he never once made me feel like I was too much or not enough. I started to believe that maybe my story wasn't over. That maybe the worst thing that had happened to me was actually making space for something better. And then, on an ordinary Wednesday afternoon, Tamara called me. "Becca," Tamara said, and I could hear something strange in her voice. Not sadness. Not urgency exactly. Something more like disbelief. "What's wrong?" I said. "Nothing's wrong with you," she said. "It's Daniel." I hadn't spoken Daniel's name out loud in months. I felt a strange tightening in my chest. What about him? He and Charlotte are getting married. Next month. Big wedding, the whole thing. They rented out the Biltmore estate grounds. The Biltmore estate. Of course. Charlotte Beaumont doesn't do anything small. Okay, I said carefully. Why are you telling me this? Tamara paused. Because my cousin works the catering at the Biltmore. And she's been hearing things, Becca. Things about Charlotte. Things about why this wedding is happening so fast. Tamara, just listen. Apparently Charlotte's father, Richard Beaumont, has a condition in his will. Something about his estate and inheritance. If Charlotte isn't married by the time she turns 40, a significant portion of the estate goes to a charitable trust instead of to her. She turns 40 in 8 weeks. I let that sink in. So Daniel isn't marrying Charlotte because he loves her, I said slowly. I mean, maybe he does. But Charlotte is definitely marrying Daniel because she needs to be married. And fast. And Daniel is convenient. Presentable. He cleans up nice. Tamara's voice was dry. Sound familiar? I didn't say anything. Becca, I'm not telling you this to upset you. I'm telling you because I think you deserve to know the truth about what you were replaced with. It wasn't a great love story. It was a business transaction. After I hung up, I sat very still for a long time. I wasn't angry. I wasn't happy. I felt something more complex than either, a quiet, aching clarity. Daniel had burned our life to the ground chasing something that glittered. And what he'd found wasn't gold. It was just very shiny packaging over something hollow. I decided then that I would not think about Daniel Whitmore's wedding. I would not look it up. I would not drive past the Biltmore. I would spend that day with Marcus, or with Tamara, or with biscuit and gravy on a long trail run. I meant that. I genuinely meant it. But then, on the morning of Daniel's wedding, everything changed. I thought you should know, she said quietly. I don't know why exactly. It just felt like you should. After I hung up, I stood there for a long moment. And then, slowly, I started to laugh. Not a mean laugh. Not a vindictive one. Just the deep, uncontrollable laughter of someone who has spent 2 years carrying a weight and just felt it lift completely off their shoulders. I want to be honest with you. I did not go to the Biltmore to gloat. I did not go to cause a scene. I did not even plan to go at all. But Tamara called 20 minutes after the caterer did, and she said the words that undid my resolve completely. I'm going. I need to see this with my own eyes. Come with me. We'll stay in the parking lot. No one will even know we're there. I should have said no. I got in the car. We parked at the far edge of the visitor lot, far from the main entrance. We could see the valets standing around awkwardly, the wedding coordinator on her phone looking like she was about to cry, guests beginning to filter out of the main hall with expressions of bewilderment. And then I saw Daniel. He came through the main doors still in his $3,000 suit. His tie was loosened. His face was red. He was on his phone, pacing, running one hand through his hair over and over the way he always did when he was stressed. He looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I just saw him more clearly now. He stopped pacing and looked up. And across that parking lot, through the golden October air, his eyes found mine. I don't know how. There were hundreds of people. But he found me. We looked at each other for a long moment. I didn't smile. I didn't wave. I didn't say anything. I just looked at him, this man I had loved with my whole heart, who had thrown away everything we built for a future that had just dissolved on the most important day of his life. Then my phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. For words, he got what deserved. I looked at the message. I looked back at Daniel. He had looked away. I never found out who sent that text. Maybe it was someone who knew both of us. Maybe it was a wrong number. Maybe it was the universe having a moment. I put my phone in my pocket. I touched Tamara's arm. Let's go, I said. And we left. I have thought a lot about what I want to say about what happened next. Because this is where the story could go 2 ways. In one version, I tell you that Daniel fell apart completely. That he lost his job, his reputation, his future. That karma delivered a total and devastating verdict. But I believe in telling the truth, even when the truth is more complicated than a clean ending. Here is what actually happened. Daniel did lose his position at Beaumont Pharmaceuticals, predictably, since Charlotte's father was not interested in keeping his almost son-in-law on the payroll after the collapse of the engagement. He moved out of Charlotte's penthouse and back into a rental apartment. He called me once, about 3 weeks after the wedding that wasn't. I let it go to voicemail. He said he was sorry. He said he'd been a fool. He said he hoped I was happy. I didn't call him back. Not because I was cruel, but because I had nothing left to say. Charlotte, as it turned out, had been in love with someone for years, a sculptor named Elena who lived in Santa Fe. They had maintained a long and complicated relationship that Charlotte had kept hidden because of her father's expectations. On the morning of her wedding to Daniel, Elena had called and said she was on a plane and refused to let Charlotte make the biggest mistake of her life. Charlotte walked out. She and Elena got married quietly in New Mexico 6 months later. I actually read about it in a magazine. And I felt genuinely, truly happy for them. 2 people who chose love over expectation. I respect that. As for Daniel, last I heard, he had left Asheville entirely and taken a sales job in Charlotte, North Carolina. A fresh start, I suppose. I hope he finds one. Here is what I learned from all of this. I learned that the most dangerous thing you can do is build your sense of worth on someone else's love. For years, Daniel's choice of me made me feel valuable. And when he chose someone else, I felt worthless. That was a mistake. Not his mistake, my mistake. My value was never his to give or take. I learned that rebuilding is not linear. There were days, even a year after the divorce, when I would be fine all morning and then hear a certain song in the grocery store, and have to sit in my car for 10 minutes before I could drive home. Healing doesn't go in a straight line. That's okay. I learned that the people who show up for you in the dark, Tamara, Denise, my mama, those are the ones who matter. Not the people who shine when everything is easy. I learned that karma is real, but it doesn't always look the way we expect. It's not always public humiliation in a parking lot. More often it's quieter than that. It's a person realizing too late what they had. It's a hollow victory that costs more than it was worth. It's a life that looks perfect from the outside and feels empty from the inside. And I learned that a soft-spoken history teacher who brings you wildflowers on a Tuesday for no reason and stays up late listening to you talk about your patients, that kind of love is worth more than any gala photograph, any penthouse apartment, any $3,000 suit. Marcus proposed to me on a hiking trail outside of Black Mountain, on a cold February morning, with a simple ring that had belonged to his grandmother. He got down on one knee in the mud and pine needles and said, "Rebecca Calloway, I have been in love with you since you laughed so hard at my terrible history joke that you snorted, and I would like to spend the rest of my life making you do that." I said yes before he finished the sentence. We got married in April, in my backyard in Weaverville. No venue rental. No fancy photographer. Tamara made a playlist. My mama made potato salad. Biscuit and Gravy wore little bow ties. It rained for exactly 15 minutes, and then the sun came out and turned everything gold. It was the best day of my life. Not because it was perfect, but because every single person there loved us, both of us, together, without condition or agenda or expiration date. I am 34 years old. I live in a White House with a wraparound porch in Weaverville, North Carolina. I am a trauma nurse. I run half marathons. I have 2 golden retrievers and 1 incredible husband and more than enough reasons to wake up grateful every single morning. My first husband left me for a rich woman. On the day of his wedding, karma showed up right on time. And I was too busy building my beautiful life to even stay and watch. If this story spoke to you, please like and subscribe. New stories every day. And if you've ever had a moment where the universe delivered exactly what was needed at exactly the right time, drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear yours.